Hey everyone, I'm going to provide an overview of your case conceptualization and treatment plan, which is your final exam. I hope that this clarifies any questions that anyone may have. If you have any additional questions after watching this video and reading and reviewing these two examples. It's a case conceptualization example and the treatment plan example. If you have any questions at all, please, please, please contact me. Contact me prior to this being due. I can't really answer questions for you if you wait till the last minute to ask them. Please watch this video, review the two examples, and I would encourage you to work on this earlier rather than later. So essentially, you're going to write your case conceptualization in this exact format. So I would copy and paste just this sheet where it says case conceptualization. Copy and paste it, and you're going to write at the top case conceptualization of and your character from movie or TV that you're using. And then your very first Roman numeral is substance abuse history. And under A, you are going to list that person's substances that they use. So let's say if you used Kurt Cobain is one that I use pretty regularly in the past when I've done this, when I've given this assignment in a different format, and one of the documentaries is about Kurt Cobain. So if you're using Kurt Cobain, his substances used would be predominantly heroin. So you would write heroin. Could also write marijuana. You could write alcohol. You could write, the variety of substances that they use. If it's one, just write one. If there's multiple, write multiple. And write the specific substances. Frequency. How often does the individual use? Progression. So what we want to talk about here is progression from one substance to another substance, and also considering sort of tolerance. So did they progress from social drinking to daily drinking, or not being able to not drink, or they go through withdrawals? Severity and amount. You don't necessarily need to know like the specific amount that the individual is using. Let's just say, for example, in heroin, you don't need to know the specific amount, but you do need to know that they're using daily. And if they are using daily, is it because of withdrawal? And you need to write that down. If the individual is an alcoholic, you can say how much they're drinking. That's fine, but just comment there. So basically, you're going to go down A through H, and you're just going to write to each of these points. These do not need to be in complete sentences. So, for example, at H, where it says effects, blackouts, tremors, tolerance, delirium, tremors, seizures, other medical complications. Let's just say the individual has hepatitis because of sharing dirty needles. You're going to write that there. If they experience blackouts on a daily basis because of the amount that they're drinking, you're going to write that there. So be specific, but again, these do not have to be in complete sentences. Go down the list here. When I say mental status, are they alert and oriented to person, place, time, and situation? Are they experiencing hallucinations? Is there suicidal or homicidal ideations or thoughts? Are they aware that they have a problem? So judgment, insight. Do they think that they need treatment? That might be a place for judgment, both past and present. So when you go in the history of your individual, by virtue of watching a film or the TV show, you're going to want to include this. Just a note here, if your documentary or TV show or movie doesn't include some of this information, you may make it up, but don't make up the whole thing. I hope that makes sense. Go down the list, and education, just again, not complete sentences. You just need to provide information about your client. Legal history, do they have any pending charges? Were there prior charges? Social history, talk about their family, talk about their friends, talk about their relationship. Are they in a relationship? Is it an enabling or codependent relationship? Were their parents Did their parents have an addictive use disorder? Do they have any children? Again, not complete sentences. You just need to sort of write this stuff down. That's pretty self-explanatory. When you get to treatment plan, so that's Roman numeral 9. When you get to treatment plan, you see that that's worth 10 points. So that's a pretty significant amount of your points here. And I'm going to go ahead and switch to the other example here. I want to say this very clearly. Do not copy my treatment plan. This is an example. This is one that I created just as an example for you to use. But this should not be the way your treatment plan is worded. It can look like this in terms of the layout. It should look like this in terms of the layout, but you should not be using my words. So change your words. But your treatment goal, what is your overall goal? Your client's goal may be total abstinence. Your client's goal may not be total abstinence. Your client's goal may be moderation or cutting back or it could be abstinence. That's up to your client and how you write your treatment plan. What is expected? So in my example, client will abstain from mood-altering substances and engage in behavior changes needed for long-term sobriety. So for this example, this client their goal was to abstain. And so by virtue of abstaining, we're going to work on some behavioral changes that will support their desire to be sober in recovery, long-term sobriety and in recovery. And as evidenced by, how am I and my client, how are we going to assess that he's meeting what's expected in these goals in the treatment and his treatment focus? Well, we're going to have urine drug screens. So clearly this example is one where the client is either going to go get drug screens on their own, or we're in a treatment center and I'm going to be able to see that his or her drug screens are clean, meaning that we have verifiable information that says that they are not using. There's some other things. Are they attending AA and 12-step? And that the individual is going to actually start demonstrating some of these different coping skills and behavioral changes. And the problem is that the problem isn't that they're drinking or that they're using. The problem is that there may be underlying behavioral changes that need to change. There may be traumas that need to be addressed in order to sustain long-term sobriety. Remember, we've said this all along, the substances are not the problem. The substances are the vessel for, or the medium for remedying, and I'm using that term very loosely because of course it doesn't fix anything, but filling a void or dealing with the problems. What are the problems that your client actually has that necessitates needing to use or wanting to use substances? And then this goal here. So a broad goal that will help your client through this treatment plan. And so the projected length of treatment, that's up to you. Is this a 30-day stay? Is this a long-term stay? That's depends on your client and the way that you write your case conceptualization in your treatment plan. My example that I give you says 6 months to 1 year. And then go through these objectives. You don't have to have this many objectives, but this is a pretty thorough amount of objectives that address the goal and the problem. Your objectives need to address your goal and your problem. They should not be that far off from them. So you can see that we're going to talk about his family in some of these objectives. We're talking about and I keep saying him because I loosely based this off of a male client I had, but very loosely based it off of him. The objective is to attend self-help groups. So this individual wanted to be involved in AA and 12-step support groups. So this was an objective. We were going to talk about the way that he experienced powerlessness and unmanageability. These were two objectives that he really wanted to talk about, and shame and guilt, and you can kind of see that we address these as we go down the list of objectives. You can see sort of below that, how we address it. So is this an individual counseling, or is it in group counseling, or is it in both? And how often is the individual going to attend this this format? So are they going to individual counseling once a week? Or are they going to individual counseling twice a week? Are they going to group counseling? This individual for this treatment plan attended group 5 times a week. They were in a treatment center, so this was doable. If they have, this is just a heads up, if they have mental health issues, which I would, this example does not talk about mental health issues, but if your client has mental health issues, you need to address that in your case conceptualization, and you need to address that in your treatment plan. And if you identify that your client has other mental health issues like depression or bipolar disorder, then you need to include an assessment by a psychiatrist and monitoring of any sort of medication that your client may be on. I want to repeat that again. If your client has another mental health issue, so comorbid condition, then you need to address and include an objective that encompasses that mental health issue. I think that's a pretty thorough explanation of this final. I'm happy to help you, go through this. I'm happy to review it if you give it to me. Let's say by the last week or by the end of the Thanksgiving week, I'm happy to review a case conceptualization if you'd like. I cannot review them after the week of Thanksgiving. That has to be the due date. This is what's due. This is your final. This is your final. So don't hesitate to ask me if you need any help or if you want me to review this. I'm happy to do so.